Welcome to the Real People, Real Business Show, where we're talking with business owners who are in the trenches, everyday people who are working hard and have relevant and inspiring stories that you can relate to. Everyone we speak to is actively building and growing their business and is here to share their experiences, lessons, wisdom, and guidance so you can be inspired to take action towards your own goals. Today, I am so excited to welcome my friend Sophie Bujold. Sophie is a strategist, advisor, and big picture thinker for ambitious changemakers and service providers through her business, Clickworthy. She works with community leaders and entrepreneurs to build profitable, sustainable, and unique online communities. Welcome to the show, Sophie, and thanks so much for taking the time to share your story today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Let's get started. Tell me how you got to where you are right now. Tell me your story.
Well, it started with a floppy disk in the 90s. And that's when we ordered, I think, our first service, internet service at the time, and got a floppy disk full of software. And I discovered online chat rooms through it. And that opened up such a huge world for me as a teenager, especially, who was like exploring all kinds of things already in the real world, and then to have this online world open up and meeting people from all over the globe at that time. The internet was a little bit safer back then, so there were definitely a lot of interesting conversations, really cool connections, and I learned really early on how much I enjoyed living and breathing in those environments. And then when I got into the workforce, I had actually studied in PR and communications, but I had this background in digital technologies already. So it opened up a lot of doors for me right from the get-go. As a junior PR strategist and communications specialist, I was in charge of websites. I had first dibs at blogging. I had first dibs at social media, which was really exciting to me because I was learning all these new ways of communicating with people that I had never even dreamed of being able to reach really at that point. But what I was hearing very consistently from people at the time, which sounds so ludicrous now, is people were telling me, well, there's just no way you can create real connections using a computer. So that kind of set me on my journey of proving them wrong, because I was like, I've just discovered all these friends. I have stuff arriving at my house from total strangers from around the world, much to my mother's dismay. And I've made real friends using these technologies. So as my career evolved, I started really looking at how can we use online tools to create real human experiences and real connection. Without boring you with every job I've had since then, that's been kind of the common thread in everything I've done, is how do we connect and how do we build community in a space where we're not able to see each other one-on-one or face-to-face, which is very appropriate. I think I was just prepping for the year 2020, really, my entire life. So.
And were you doing this work inside of like corporate jobs?
Yeah. So for a long time, I spent, almost 10 years in the travel industry specifically, which is a very relationship-based industry, and worked internally in corporate in digital departments and in charge of, intranet websites and places where people were actually gathering digitally from across the globe already. So while my work wasn't 100% focused on building those communities 100% of the time, it always was an undercurrent. Like, I always ended up in that role where they were like, oh, now we got to figure out how to create a discussion board or whatever else. And that was really where I loved playing and being.
So the work you're doing now, you are helping people who run communities, who
Mm-hmm.
have their own communities, basically monetize those. Is that correct? Or like make
Yeah.
them more sticky?
Yeah. And I think there's two different types of clients that I work with. So one is for people who have an idea for a community. They know that they want to shift their business model to be much more community focused, but they're not sure how to get it there. So I actually help them map out the framework for that and what they want to create and how it'll roll out. And then for those who have a community that may not be working quite as well as they want or not monetizing as well as they were hoping, I help them take a look at what's going on and readjust that experience or reinvent it in some cases. I have a lot of clients that actually come in saying, I want to take it to the next level. Like, we've done this, and now here's my idea, here's my vision. How do we transition over to that?
So I'm guessing that you're doing some kind of systems work as well as engagement work, as well as community. Like, tell me a little bit about what that work actually looks like, because I'm
Yeah.
fascinated.
Yeah, it definitely, it's kind of at the intersection of all three of those things. So it's looking at not only what are the fun things we get to do in the community, but who is going to help support that? How do we build a team around it? And when I say team, I use team very loosely. It could be volunteers in your community as much as like actual team members. How is it, what's going to be the profit plan behind it, and what is the value you're offering, and how do you sustain it all without like driving yourself completely bonkers with having to be in there all the time?
That's a really important point, because I think I have a lot of clients who have gotten to that place. Like, there seems to be a real like point in an entrepreneur's journey where they start to consider building memberships or communities, or that kind of business model, because they've reached that threshold, right?
Yeah.
And they think that it's going to relieve them of some
Yes.
of the work that they have to do. And I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah, I
Maybe.
mean, yeah, their communities are a business model of their own, so they don't come without some effort or work.
Yeah, I'm working with a client right now, and we've just totally redesigned her business model directly into a membership community. She runs a 7-figure business, and we have moved, a course model, business model, into a membership model. And it's a whole other layer. Like, it's just
Mhm.
a whole other layer of work that is, I think, going to be really beneficial. But it's I think a lot of people go into it thinking that it's going to be kind of a centralized point of activity, and then everything else kind of goes away. But talk a little bit about what makes a membership really awesome, and then also what are the hidden challenges that people don't really think about.
Yeah, I think what you just said brings up some really, interesting observations. I think in the last few years in particular, there are a lot of marketers that have put their hands on community and used it as a marketing tool more than a community. And I see it definitely in the conversations that I have when customers are coming to me. I have the gamut of, hey, I'm running this free Facebook group that's literally taken off from under me and I don't know what to do with it anymore, to like, I'm actually like wanting to build something sustainable and like actually productize the community experience. And I think within those conversations, the most common misconception or misunderstanding that I see is people mistake a community for an audience.
Ah, I'll say that again.
So I'll talk a little bit about the difference, because really the hallmark of a really great community is an environment that is very decentralized. And what I mean by that is that if you think of the analogy of being on stage, you're the one at the front of the room entertaining whoever is sitting in the audience. A lot of communities are built that way, where the leader of the community is kind of perceived as the authority in terms of giving information and providing guidance and being kind of the voice of reason in the group. The problem with that model in a community setting is as soon as you remove that leader, everyone leaves the room. There's not a whole lot of networking and interacting. Whereas if you think of your community more as a networking event, where maybe there is an organizer that facilitated the gathering of people, but that the goal is really for those people to meet and start collaborating with one another and interacting with one another, you have a much more organic experience. The leader can literally step out of the room and the activity will still go on. So a lot of communities are not built with that kind of framework in mind. They're really built more on that marketing model of, hey, I just want to gather people so that I can sell my program or sell my thing. And that's the one thing that I see a lot. I think the other piece too is that people will build the community from one of two perspectives. They'll think about what does their business need and build an environment that works for them, and or they'll think about what does the person that I want to put in the community need and they'll develop something for them, but they never look at the intersection of both. So they end up either building a community that doesn't really serve their market well, or they end up building something that doesn't serve them well, and they end up overwhelmed and overworked and doing things that they actually don't really like doing. And I would say those there was a wave probably about a year or two ago where a lot of big names were closing down their communities. They were, a lot of them, if you looked, were either or. They hadn't really considered, like, what do we need as a business, what does this need to sustain, and what do our customers want, and where is like that sweet spot in the middle.
So how do you find that?
You start asking yourself the question from both sides of the coin. So for a lot of the customers that I work with, it involves a lot of reflection. Like, one of the pieces of my mapping process is really reflecting on what you really need, what makes you different, what values you want to bring to the table, and then taking a look at what your customers need. So, in entrepreneur circles, it's the customer research phase of it. There are a lot of online communities that I've seen that have completely skipped that step of really understanding, like, where is there a need in the market, where does my community fit into it, what are people looking for, and what value can I bring to the table. So there's that. What we do is really take some time to reflect, and also take some time to talk to customers to start seeing the patterns and start really uncovering both sides of the equation. And only after we've done that do we bring both together and go, customers are telling me they need this, that, and the other thing. Me as a business, what am I willing and able to provide to support that? And then from there, how does that manifest into like a cohesive experience and product?
Who are the most successful community leaders? Like who's the right fit and who's not the right fit for building that kind of business model?
I'm so happy you asked that, because my answer usually surprises people. Introverts usually make the best community leaders. They think they're not the right fit for it, but they actually are, because they don't want to be in the spotlight. Like, they will actively avoid being in that spotlight and give the stage to someone else. And that actually is super helpful in the community space, because that means they're not hogging the attention.
Mm.
They typically will be, they're more attentive to people, they're more perceptive, because they're looking outwardly at like people's reactions and things like that. So that's one big hallmark. And I think the other one is people who are, for me anyways, in the line of work that I do, it's people who are really clear on their values and the value they bring out to the world. Because then they're really great at setting boundaries on what they will and will not do, which makes the experience that much more unique and special and impactful, really, at the end.
So the people who come to you that are struggling a bit with their communities that they have built already, what is it that they're typically doing or not doing wrong, but what are they missing?
Yeah, I think it's the community versus audience is a huge one. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, that's one of the biggest things that I see. As soon as we can shift their mindset from being like, oh, I need to be the provider of everything, to no, I need to be the person who shines the spotlight on other people, that usually changes the dynamic right away. I think the other piece that they usually are missing is they have created the group or the container for the community before actually knowing what they need to offer it. So then they end up either on a platform that's limited for what they really need to create, or they end up in an environment where they're like, I'm doing all the things and I'm overwhelmed and this isn't what I signed up for. Those are probably the two biggest mistakes or challenges that I see coming through my door.
I know a lot of people think about creating a community or a membership program on the tail end of creating a product, right? So they've got some sort of time boxed experience that their customers have. And then it sort of is this natural evolution, because the people who are going through their programs or their courses then want a space where they can interact. So I think that's that sort of second part that you were talking about, where they create the group, but they don't really have a passion for
Yeah.
building it, and then it becomes this sort of dies on the vine, right? Do you think that people necessarily need to create these communities for their followers to interact?
No.
No.
That's the short answer. Absolutely not. I think there are a million ways for people to connect together. When I say online community, we all think of kind of that Facebook group or Mighty Network or whatever else is out there that kind of contains people. But I do think that there is a piece of community building that also looks at real life gatherings and how there are a million other ways to connect people really closely together. And I think the group or the creating that login environment where there's some discussion happening is kind of the default, because that's the easy one, right? It's the thing that people know. But I think at the end of the day, when you get clearer on the value you want to deliver and the people, like what your customers need, you can get really creative with how you're doing that in different situations. And you can look at, even if you think of, it might not be the most exciting example, but like universities, like once you graduate, they want to stay in touch with alumni. They don't necessarily do it through an online forum. They'll do it through a quarterly newsletter. They will do it through class reunions. They will do it through a whole bunch of other means. That's kind of an easy model to put out there in terms of things being done, quote unquote, differently or maybe traditionally, but it's just to show that like the community piece is really around facilitating the ability for people to connect together, and it doesn't need to be by putting them in a group.
I agree. Talk to me a little bit about, okay, so here's the question I want you to respond to, because I hear it all the time. There's a proliferation of Facebook groups out there,
Yes.
right? And they're either attached to a product, or they are,
Yes.
they were created on a whim. And there are a lot of business owners, especially the introverts, who tend to be 98% of my clients, who are just loath to go and build a Facebook community. They don't like being on Facebook. They don't want to be on Facebook. They want to stay clear of that, but then they're drawn over to it because the audience is there already. Is it true that it's double extra hard to build a community outside of the Facebook platform?
It is, if you haven't gotten extremely clear on the value you offer. It all comes down to value. If people are finding the experience you offer valuable, they will come to you on whatever platform you're on. The platform doesn't dictate it doesn't make it slightly easier, yes, because people are on Facebook, but I would also kind of argue that people are looking for reasons to get off Facebook at this point, because the platform's getting extremely distracting. There's some ethical issues with how the business is operated. There's all kinds of other factors where people are actually kind of logging off of Facebook and not looking at it either. So if you're going to be using community as a central piece of your business model, I would actually argue that Facebook is probably not the place you want to be anyways. You want to find other ways to create that community in that environment.
Yeah, I've been considering it myself, and thinking about building a community outside of Facebook in one of these other platforms. So how do we drive people there? I think that's the piece that keeps people stuck to Facebook, is that everyone's there already and they're seeing their notifications. How do we ensure that engagement happens, that people are making a habit out of visiting and engaging on another platform?
You create an experience that doesn't need the notification to make people interested to see what's going on.
Talk more about that.
Yeah. So it goes to a little bit of what I was just saying in terms of being able to create an environment where people want to be there. You draw them in by the value you're putting in the group. And that doesn't mean, I guess when we were talking about mistakes earlier, I think there's another common misconception that says that I need to post every day in order for engagement to be high in my community. a lot of times the amount of engagement in the forum or the amount of discussion does not dictate how valuable the community is to the membership. So if they are there, I'll give you an example. If they are there for the purpose of coaching or learning and connecting with other business owners in kind of that high level setting. So I've seen communities where it's tied to like a business program, higher level, kind of the founder of the company that's building up. They don't have time to be on a group all day. That's not where they find the value. Where they find the value usually is in mastermind calls or maybe an event once a year where they get to all meet and like talk about industry problems and things like that. They might find some value in an accountability time every week or whatever else. It might actually not be in the discussion itself. So if you create an experience that serves their needs, they'll naturally want to be in the know of what's going on because that's a hugely valuable piece of their day. The notification setting on Facebook no longer matters at that point because they'll naturally go like, oh, I haven't been in the community for a day or two. Let me log back in to see what I missed. Or I need to make sure I log in once a day to make sure that I keep in touch with what's going on and whatever else. So if you really focus, and that's where my work, I've seen it over and over again, if we really focus on aligning those values, making sure the business gets what they need, making sure that customer needs or gets what they need, the notification settings on whether it beeps, it boops, or it doesn't do anything just stops being the most important thing really at the end of the day.
Yeah, so this customer I was telling you that I was working with, we have actually built her community and her membership entirely in another platform.
Yeah.
And so far so good, right? There are reasons for them to come and engage on the platform. There are valuable resources for them on the platform, and I think maybe that's the pull through is that they're obviously they're getting, questions and answers and some coaching and office hours and all that sort of thing. So it is a lot of work, right? There's a lot of content that has been created, but it's the content itself is sort of in a course format. But all the other stuff is engagement, right? All of the other benefit is in resources. So how important is it to have a content back end in a community?
It depends on your audience. So some people, in some communities, it's extremely important. In others, if you have, there are like 7 core reasons why people commune or get into community together. And none of them are actually about content. They can be around, someone is in a community of practice, so they want to be connected to other people that are doing similar things or are in similar roles. It could be around a cause that they believe in. It could be around a life situation. We're thinking of things like health crises or crises of identity or whatever it is, that they're in some kind of specific life circumstance and they want to find other people that are living through the same stuff. And I'm not going to name all 7 because they're blanking right now, but those are like the 3 most common ones that I'm seeing at the moment is either a professional community, something that someone believes strongly in that they want to be part of. Big example, there was a community a few years ago that got started simply because this woman in the Middle East was really tired of not being able to find athletic wear that allowed her to wear a hijab that was great for running and doing sports. And she started a community and very quickly built up a huge amount of people that had the exact same problem. She didn't have to create a ton of content for that. People just believed in the cause so much and had a similar life experience that they got together, started making recommendations on sportswear that might work, and then got the attention of Nike.
I remember the story.
Yeah, and she got the attention of Nike, who wanted to be proactive in helping their customers, and they came in and they designed a whole line just based on the fact that this one lady created a community of people who were passionate about finding a sports appropriate hijab to wear. So if you look at that example, she was not creating content. I think that definitely on the business side of things, people feel that obligation. It's almost like they're like, but there's no value if there's no content. But I would argue that the simple fact that you can have good connections can sometimes be strong enough. And again, it goes back to that alignment that we talked about at the beginning, and really understanding what people are looking for. I am part of communities where there is no content provided. The value is in the curation of the people who are in the group, in the quality of the events that are being organized, and that's where the content is really. Like, we're building it as we go, and we're in an environment where everyone wants to share and contribute. So we're building our own content as it goes. And the leader of the community is actually not building most of it. She's just facilitating the space for that. And that's where the value is. And that's why we pay her to be in that community.
Right. And how important is it that that community, the definition of that community is very focused? Like, it seems to me like the most successful communities are the ones that are really rallying around a shared experience, or rallying around not necessarily a cause, but a feeling or an identity.
Yeah, it's extremely important. It's actually the core of it. So if you don't have something that people can stand for, whether it be their life situation or a cause or whatever else, um, there really is no reason for that community to exist. Like, it's very rare. If you think of a neighborhood, let's take the community out of the online space, because really the online space just mimics what we do normally as humans in most cases. It's very rare for people in a neighborhood to just stand outside and hope that like a group of people gathers. There usually is a gathering around a barbecue, or the community garden needs to meet and like discuss some issues or whatever else. There needs to be a reason for people to be out there and kind of communing in that large of a number. And it's the exact same thing online. People need a reason to be there. If you don't have that, chances are you're not going to attract a lot of people, or you'll attract an audience because they like you as a person and they want to follow what you have to say.
Right. And so what about that sort of hybrid program versus program community model,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you become the reason for them to be there, but it means that you have to consistently deliver.
Yes and no. So I actually have a client who launched her community about a year ago, and it's a model like that where there's kind of a front end learning piece, and then the back end is really about supporting one another as you're implementing what you learned in the program. And what the way we built the community, first and foremost, leveraged the fact that she wanted to be able to step away from her business a little bit more and have something still going on. So the community was designed with that intent in mind, to create space for her to do other things, to have a family, to travel more, all those things. And what we found in the community piece of it is, again, if she could be the person who was great at shining the spotlight on her membership, and I won't lie, the first group or two she worked very hard to like create some engagement, but now that the group is rolling, what she's finding is that she's getting more and more members who believe so much in what she has to offer that they're offering up some time to help in the community, that they're wanting to be a bigger part of it, that they're starting to create that content. And what she's getting good at is being able to curate it. She's the chief curator in that experience. And she just makes sure that it kind of aligns with, hey, I just taught them all this stuff. Let's just make sure that whatever I curate actually aligns with what I just taught. And she's actually producing less and less of the content at this point, and members are just naturally stepping up as they go. They know kind of what the conventions are, which is another really important piece of the community. Like, what are the things we do and don't do here? And they actually come up with their own ideas that fit within that model. So it doesn't always need to be this huge content machine that people have built it up to be.
It could just be the provision of something valuable showing up, right? Once a week, once a month.
Yeah.
right? So there seems to be as many business models as there are topic areas.
Oh, yeah. And I think the joy for me in the communities that I build is finding that uniqueness. So,
Mm.
that client I just mentioned, she's a digital strategist by trade, but she has a huge background in mindfulness and yoga. She has her yoga certification. It shows up in the way she's built her business, it shows up in the way she builds digital strategy. And I was like, we can't not acknowledge that as a part of your community. So she's actually built in some mindfulness exercises and some mindfulness practices to give her group. And she's using those skills as much as her digital stuff to be able to create this experience, which has been super magical. And I think we were having an exchange last week where she surveyed her membership, and the feedback that was coming in was using all of the value words we had identified at the very beginning of this process. She had never told them what the value words were, and they were showing up in the testimonials that she was getting from people about that experience, which was like, she was sharing them on Instagram, and I just messaged her. I'm like, how cool is it that that's happening right now? That the thing that you wanted to value the most is showing up in what your customers are getting from it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the more you can dial in that value, that uniqueness, the more your community is memorable, and the less you have to work hard at, providing for it all the time.
So let's change course for a second and talk a little bit more about you and your business. So
Sure.
at some point in time, you said, you know what? Clickworthy is going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that experience.
It was a very organic experience. So after my 10 years in corporate, I decided to start a business very naively, just kind of like, I'm going to quit and start a business. That was my plan. That was the plan at the time. And well, I shouldn't say that. The plan was, let's take one piece of the work that I was doing, which was building community. At the time, social networks were kind of gaining popularity in the business world. They had been around for several years, but business people were starting to clue in on how they could use things. So let's take that piece of it and really like double down on it. So I spent quite a bit of time in my first years in business traveling across the world, giving workshops and training seminars and all kinds of things about the use of social media. And what ended up happening that morphed into Clickworthy is the fact that people picked up on the way in which I was teaching people to use those networks. I was always teaching people how to build community over an audience. That was the thing. They're like, yeah, you're teaching us how to use a Facebook page, but you're also like changing the narrative of what a Facebook page should be used for. And we really need more of that. And then the clients started coming. Like, they're like, hey, we know you've built these communities in the corporate world. Can you help us with ours next? Can you help us with this? So I'd say probably around year 5-ish, that became very clear that that was my niche, was the community building side of it, and like using all these tools that I understood to create an environment that gathered people rather than just spoke to them. So that's how it was born. It was very like, there was not a moment. I think it was an accumulation of moments of people just saying one thing or like pointing something out about my strengths, or um, really kind of, I had a lot of friends who were pointing out when my eyes were sparkling when I was talking about things, and like, did you realize that you're really nerding out about this piece right now? And that's where Clickworthy was born, really, at that point. So I went from using just my name to actually putting a company name to it.
And so how long has that been a thing?
That has been a thing for about 6 years now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know when you and I finally ran into each other, but I know you were in the process of building.
Yes. So that would have probably been a CTA conference
A few
a
years
couple years
ago.
ago. Definitely not last year.
Definitely not last year. No, that's for sure. And who are you working with primarily, and how are they finding you?
I work with a lot of creatives. So, you can build community in a lot of different industries, but the creatives are definitely the people that speak to my heart. I am a creative myself, if you can't tell. So I work with a lot of coaches or people who are wanting to help new artists. I've also built or helped communities that were actually for very specific, like one of the communities I worked on was for pattern designers, which I didn't know was a thing until I got introduced to their world. So yeah, anything that has to do with making or having a profession that's kind of out of the box, extraordinary. I was talking to some people a couple weeks ago that their whole job is designing escape rooms. Um, that's what they do for a living, and they make
That's
quite a
amazing.
good
I love that.
living at that. So anything that's kind of in that creative realm, I get very excited about helping and figuring out how we can create a community around it. And in terms of like experience, I tend to work with people who figured out their business model. Like they're already selling something pretty successfully. They're not at the beginning of their journey, probably, 5 or 6 years in, really at that point. And they understand and appreciate kind of the strategy that I can bring to the table in terms of really making this a viable product for them.
So are you finding them mostly through referrals, or do you have some other kind of structured marketing going on in place?
I have no other magic pipeline going on. I've a lot of word of mouth. And I think really that channel served me really well just because what I do is so uncommon in the consulting world. It's very common in the corporate space, in the like intrapreneur space. There are community managers all over, but there's not a lot of us that are consulting, or at least Google tells me there's not a lot of us consulting.
I honestly don't know another you.
Yeah, I know of maybe one or two, and even then we work so differently that I wouldn't even consider them another me by any means. So it requires a little bit more explaining than just saying, "Hey, I build websites," or "Hey, I design logos." Like that people get, but the community space, it's almost like people have to experience it to be able to explain it to other people, which is maybe it's a me problem in terms of being able to explain it, but at the same time, the most solid projects I've had have all come from people who've experienced what I put them through and then talk to other people about it.
Oh, there's a whole community of community builders.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
when you know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what's so beautiful about your business is that you know who you're talking to, you know what they need, you know who they are. And in that sort of niche of people who are community builders, what's your sweet spot inside of that niche?
Yeah, I think definitely the creative world, for sure. There's a lot of people, like I said, most of the people I know who do what I do it for startups, do it for corporate, as an external consultant. But in the creative space, I have not encountered any others like me. And I hear that from prospects when they're coming in that, like, I've been looking for you for years and I'm just excited that I found you. So that's definitely been a niche. I think the other advantage that I have is that I had that opportunity really early on to be exposed to so many things that a junior person would not have. Like my first job within a month, they were like, HTML, you're now in charge of our corporate website. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, cool, I know I read the book. I can kind of figure it out, but like I was in charge of writing the content, of putting it together, like the whole thing. And that really gave me enough understanding that I can talk the tech language if we need to and understand the platforms and understand how they can work, but I don't necessarily want to work in them. I just know enough to be able to translate that to a tech guy or development team. So I think that's one piece. I think the PR and communications came in really handy because I understand the importance of messaging. Understand the importance of knowing exactly what you want to say and how to say it. And I have this third piece, which is like empathy is my number one strength. So for a lot of what I do, people will sometimes rely on analytics. I rely on my gut a lot. My gut is able to tell how people will react to a certain message or how people will react to how we put the experience together. And I think that's the hard one to quantify or to like explain concretely, because it's something that it's just in me that I'm very good at being able to anticipate how something will be received, which in the community space is hugely useful because it avoids a lot of missteps.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think your alignment with that creative world as well. If you're watching this on the video, you'll see that Sophie's, she's got all this amazing artwork behind her, and then her shirt matches her artwork. I don't know if that was planned, but
No.
she's an inherently creative person. I know her as a creative person, and she walks the talk, right? She lives and breathes that world. And so I think that's nicely aligned with the creative world as well. That's very intuition based and very, like, you can't explain art.
Yeah.
Like, you can't explain where that came from, but
Yeah.
it came from somewhere, and it just happened. So
Yeah.
I think that's really appropriate.
Yeah. And I think what I've seen is like most people I've encountered in the business space will start with the analytics and then figure out what's going on. I start the opposite way. I'll start with my gut and go, here's where I think we need to look. And then I'll use numbers and research to be able to validate it. So I don't just go on my gut in case anyone's like, you need data. I do look at the data, but I start the other way. It's like, where do I think things are going wrong? Where do I think this might go? Now let's validate it with a bit of research.
I think that's smart, because I think that in this circumstance in communities, this is very much about people and psychology, and why people make decisions to do things that they do. And this is all about the thing that makes membership sticky are the shared experiences and the relationships that people build within. So we've just hired a community manager with this client that I'm working with, because I think that's going to be the number one thing to keep
Absolutely.
this business growing, is a dedicated community manager that is so focused on all of these clients and making the experience amazing, but also giving them an opportunity to get to know each other, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about what is next for you. Where are you going from here?
So there's a couple avenues. I actually have a creative project that I'm really excited about working on next. So I'm still taking on community clients and doing community strategy work, but I also, as a creative, like to have a few things on the go that engages different parts of my brain. So I'm working on that next, and it really is focused around the idea of helping women in particular give themselves more permission to play. It's something that I see in my work all the time, especially when we get to the point of creating community. Like, people are like, no, everyone's doing it this way. I need to do it this way. But then it doesn't feel right. And they're just not really trained or giving themselves that permission to go like, what if we try this just as a test? What if, like, they're really concerned about that perfectionism. So I've got that project on the back burner. It's super vague at this point. So I'm still doing some exploratory conversations and things around that. And then from the business side, I am really looking at partnerships for this year. So rather than doing like ad hoc consulting, I'm looking for, 2 or 3 really solid clients who have a longer term project that they need a strategist on the team for. So not just the community manager that will get in the weeds and like interact and engage with people, but someone who's looking at the strategy piece to build a new iteration of their community or something from scratch. But yeah, I'd love to connect with more of those folks in the creative space. And some examples of people I've talked to, I had a conversation with someone who has a watercolor community of 6,000 students that she wants to up level. I've talked to a company in the Valley who is, they create crafting supplies for a large community of crafters, and they have no community space. So they're looking at what community would look like for them. So those types of companies are the people that I'm really interested in partnering with for the next year, as well as developing this yet unnamed creative project that's going to be coming soon.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear more about it.
Yeah.
So this whole podcast, this whole show is about being more real. And I think if you know me, you know that I'm pretty down to earth and straightforward and I don't like a lot of BS. So the one question that I ask every guest on the show is, what to you is the difference between what we hear in the business world and see in the business world and what's actually real?
So what is the difference between the two?
Yeah, what's the biggest difference between what we're seeing out in the online or the business world and what's actually real in business?
It's so funny. So I'll say the first thing that comes to mind because I literally just had a conversation about this yesterday. We were talking about how in a lot of online circles, there's this obsession with making everything beautiful. Like contracts, proposals, like legal documents, everything has to be branded and beautiful. And how in the real world, people get by with literally a Google Doc with no logos on it, and it works just fine. And they're signing agreements and doing the thing. So that was my latest conversation. I think, yeah, that polish is definitely what I would pick on at this point because I think it ties into everything I just talked about in terms of being able to allow yourself to play more. Like you can't put things out that are pretty and polished all the time. Sometimes you have to test it out, come back to it, reiterate, keep polishing, and keep going. And if you focus too much on making it perfect the first time, it just takes forever for it to get out there. And that's just not what real world businesses do. I hate using the word real because online businesses are real as well.
Yeah, I think it more like our real experiences as opposed to
Yeah,
what we think everyone is doing, right?
exactly.
Which is the just the layer, like every business is an online business now, right? Like
Yeah.
we've really moved into that world. So I have a certificate in internet marketing from 1998, and honestly, like we're just like it's all melded together now. There is no separation between an online business and an offline business.
Yeah.
It's just like, to what degree are you online, right?
Yeah.
And what degree are you offline? But these are all just channels now and platforms. So I think that that's true. But I think, we overlay the online, replace the online with just marketing, right? What do we hear
Mhm.
out there in the world? But I think that's a really interesting answer that you came up with. Nobody said that before, but especially from somebody who's immersed in the art world, right? Where everything is beautiful and everything is aesthetically pleasing, at least.
Yeah. Although that's another thing that I kind of counter and that a lot of artists work on. They do work on making ugly art.
Yes, they
They just
do.
don't show it.
No, and if you listen to someone like Freeman Patterson speak, he's, his photography is just exceptional. But he's like, here, let me show you. He'll in all of his talks,
Here are
he'll
the 10,000
here are
pictures
the
that
10,
didn't turn out.
literally 10,000 pictures
Yep.
that were just crap. And he's like, look at this one. This is my 5-year-old could have taken this. And then he'll go through and go through, and then all of a sudden there'll be that one. And he's like, oh, there it is. But they don't just happen, right? You have
That
to
is
go through
correct.
a lot of crap before it comes out. I love that. Okay, so you are growing into some interesting places. You are moving into some interesting projects. I can't wait to hear more about them. We are coming up on our time, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. Can you tell our listeners how they can find you?
Yes, the easiest way is to go to my website, clickworthy.com, and that is CLIQUE worthy.com. And I'm most active on LinkedIn if you're looking to find me there, or you can send me a note on the website, and that's the easiest place to find me.
Awesome. We'll put those links in the show notes. And honestly, one of my favorite business names ever. It's so smart.
Thank you. It took a few years to get to it, so super happy it
I
resonates.
believe it. I believe it. This stuff is hard. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap up the episode. Thank you so much for such an amazing conversation. Obviously, you and I are going to continue talking about this because it's very relevant to kind of where I'm at in my business journey as well. But make sure to go check out Sophie and her amazing offers, what she is doing out there, and keep an eye on her new projects because I am certain they will be really engaging and really interesting, and you're going to want to see what she comes up with. And thank you for tuning in today to hear this story. And finally, I would love for you to join us for our next episode where we're going to be speaking to my very good friend, Meg Casebolt, who is an SEO strategist that works with female entrepreneurs looking to increase their online presence and generate more leads, and is sharing her story about how her business, Love at First Search, came to be and her experiences along the way. You are going to love Meg. Thank you again for being here. And if you've enjoyed today's content, I would love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on. This helps us share these stories with an even bigger audience. Until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep being real.